this computer. I'll also make a quick announcement at the end of my intro about recording. But I'm going to wait one more minute to let some people join and make sure I'm admitting everybody. So nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces here. Okay, I think we should probably get started now. So I'm going to just make sure I have everybody else let in. Okay. So, hello, I'm Ashley Colby of SCORI, which is the Sustainable Consumption Research and Action Initiative. I'm here to moderate this webinar that's entitled Sustainability as a Deep Cultural Phenomenon, an Exploration of Relations to Sustainable Food Supply. This webinar is part of the Belmont Forum funded Co-Creation of Sustainable Food Supply Chains project. And the general topic of this webinar is we're going to invite you to explore sustainability not just as a term, but as a deeply embedded cultural phenomenon. Through narratives, images, and lived experiences, this webinar explores how people relate to sustainability in diverse and meaningful ways. As for format, first we will have Oliver Parodi to do a short presentation as an introduction to the ideas and the theory of this webinar. Oliver is a philosopher, cultural scientist, and civil engineer. He's head of the Karlsruhe Transformation Center for Sustainability and Cultural Change and senior researcher at KIT, ETAS in Germany. For his full bio, you can see the webinar poster. Then we will have Pia and Ava, my colleagues from the project, present some results from research they're conducting. Pia is a sociologist and sustainability researcher, also at KAT and KIT in Karlsruhe, and Ava also KAT and KIT. She is a geoecologist and works in transdisciplinary sustainability research, transformative education, and sustainability assessment. After those results, I will speak with our Turkish partner, Eileen Topal, about her thoughts on deep sustainability. Eileen works in the Department of Political Science and Public Administration at the Middle East Technical University in Ankara, Turkey. And finally, we'll be doing some question and answer with the participants at the end. I'll be keeping track of any questions you have throughout the presentations, and I'll moderate those questions. So feel free to use the chat function to put questions. This webinar is being recorded, and let me confirm that it looks like it is being recorded. If you don't want your face seen on the recording, please turn your camera off, but otherwise we'd welcome and appreciate if you did turn the camera on so we can see your faces and reactions. The planned duration of the webinar is 90 minutes. And then to begin, we're going to do a brief Mentimeter. This is a website where you get to enter in a word that sort of this question brings up for you. We're going to ask you the question, what does deep sustainability mean to you? So I would ask you all to go to menti.com and enter in this code 55443785. And then we're going to take a look at what words come up for you. And I will share my screen. And I would like to see this one. Okay, we're seeing cultural change, transformation. Give everybody a minute to get over there. Again, the question, what does deep sustainability mean to you? Thriving, resilience, a lot of change. I see that a lot of we see some challenge, personal and political, communal action, a new field of research. It's nice to see. Care for nature and people. Nice. And resilience is a little, I like these word clouds. It's the words get a little bit bigger when they're used more than once. The change of people, how people think, localism. Oh, resilience is getting bigger. It's nice to see. Future relations. Great. Spirituality. Interesting. I like that. Let's see, a holistic view, well-being, long-term commitment, right? Wisdom. I like that one. It's nice. Well-being, future, and cultural change is another one that keeps coming up. Wonderful. Any other comments, Ava or Pia, about this word cloud, or Oliver, that you want to make before we move on? Anything stand out for you? Nope. Okay, so with this, thank you for sharing this. We're going to see how these words and these thoughts that you have at the beginning of this webinar are, maybe influenced or changed, or whether or not it resonates with the presentations we hear from our various presenters. Thank you so much for doing this. And with that, I will hand it over to Oliver to get us started.
Okay. Thanks, Ashley, for the introduction. I tried to share my screen. Okay. Can you see my slides?
Yes, and not yet in presentation mode, but now we're good in presentation mode. You're good to
In
go.
presentation. Okay. So thanks again for the introduction, Ashley, and hello to everybody. I would like to present some insights from a cultural theory of sustainability transformation here, which I think are fruitful and relevant for this project. And it's about deep sustainability as an analytical framework for sustainability transformation. So let's get right into it. This is just to give you an idea of what I mean when I talk about sustainability or sustainable development. I use the two terms almost synonymously here. When I talk about sustainability, I am referring to the scientific discourse around the United Nations efforts as here with the SDGs. In general, what is still central for me is what was written in the Brundtland report in 1987. You certainly know this text, sustainable development is realized when it meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That's still central for me and for sustainability in research and politics, I think. And now I would like to take you with me on the way to a cultural theory of sustainability transformation. Starting point is the question, what all needs to be transformed today in order to realize sustainability? And the first important step is to understand sustainability, and especially our current non-sustainability, as a deep cultural phenomenon. Let's get started with a picture. When we look at our current global sustainability problems, we see a huge mountain of problems like pollution, social inequality, climate heating, poverty, and so on. And when we try to describe, map, and measure this mountain of sustainability problems, we usually do so under the headings of ecology, economy, and/or social affairs. But when we take a step back and look at the mountain from a long distance, we can see that we can realize that the mountain is not only a mountain, but has another form. It is more like an iceberg and has a different shape. And the large part of the problem mountain has so far lain beneath the surface of the discourse, mainly unnoticed. Our problem mountain of non-sustainability has, in addition to the ecological, economic, and social aspects or dimensions, a huge deeper layer that mostly goes unrecognized in its scope and nature. and that is culture. Ultimately, all of our sustainability problems root in our cultures. Or to put it in another way, the visible sustainability problems have their origin and cause in our global and globalized culture. In our international circle here, I have to say in our own cultures. So please check if what I am about to say applies to your own cultural background. It is about fundamental cultural patterns, patterns of thoughts, worldviews, which are deeply inscribed in our cultures. At least regarding our Western, predominant, and globalized culture, I am concerned about, for example, growth or autonomy, materialism, or alienation. So if we So if we take two steps back and look at the entire mountain of our sustainability problems and ourselves as humans from a proper distance, we see that our deeply inscribed and in some cases very old cultural patterns ultimately play a major role in the prevailing destructive sustainability problems. We need to look at the whole iceberg and transform its content. Since culture is a central concept here, I must explain what I understand by culture in this context. When I speak of culture, I do not mean fine arts like painting or music, nor am I concerned with cultural differences or nations or cultural groups at first. For me, and in a cultural theory, culture is something very fundamental. It describes what makes up a community. Culture means the normality of a community. It shows itself in commonly shared norms, behaviors, values, and worldviews, institutions, symbols, and laws. Culture is the glue of community, of a community, of different communities. And it takes place in the interplay of collective and individual. I will get back to this later on. Subjects of cultures are institutions, material, and spiritual. Now get directly back to sustainability. Sustainable development in terms of culture ultimately aims at lift cultures of sustainability and requires fundamental cultural changes. Let us now go to the core of the cultural theory of sustainability transformation to describe and conceptualize sustainability and unsustainability as deep cultural phenomena. I have developed a cultural theoretical analytical framework, which I have named Deep Sustainability. Drawing on cultural theories by Hansen and others, system theory, and in the sustainability field in the idea of leverage points, I have designed a level model of sustainability transformation. These levels are arranged in a culture theoretical sense, from the visible, tangible, obvious, and conscious to the less visible, hidden, unconscious, from the material, institutional to the spiritual. Let's start at the top with the obviously and the material. Level 1 is that of material physical objects, for example, buildings, technology, infrastructures, products, as well as creatures. Here we are talking about power plants, resources, ecosystems, about food production, about all the things that we can touch and we are so familiar with from our work as sustainability researchers. The level below is the regulatory level. Here, the material aspects already recede somewhat into the background. It is more about text and language than about material artifacts. The regulatory level is about laws, regulations, policies, and strategies. This level is also very present in the general sustainability discourse. We are all familiar with the debates about the right political programs, market regulations, technical standards, economic management instruments, and so on. And if you now look at both levels, you can already see an important connection between the levels here. The lower level influences the upper level. It controls, in a way, so to speak, what happens on the uppermost level. But let's go one step further or deeper. The next level is that of explicit or implicit values. This is the level where the content is often no longer explicit or written down. Examples would be freedom, examples for values would be freedom, health, justice, economic growth, autonomy, and so on. One level lower is the level of meaning. That's what I used to call it. That is about basic worldviews, strong cultural patterns, and the big cultural narratives. The transition to level 3 is fluid, or the other way around. Growth, for example, can be both an implicit value on level 3 and a fundamental cultural pattern on level 4. The difference of level 3 and 4 is that these cultural patterns and motives are fundamental to our collective identity, our self and world conception. This is the level of the big question and the big narratives. What is man? What is time? What is the meaning of life? Common motives in my Western German culture, for example, are anthropocentrism, man at the center of the world, a materialistic worldview, or the linear growth motive. And there are still some more levels of sustainability transformation. Another deeper level, what I called psychic level, that of perceptions, emotion, attitudes, and relationships. It is already very hidden. You have to dig deep and make a lot of effort to be able to grasp it and describe it verbally. But for example, our perception is very fundamentally, it gives us access to our world. How we perceive the world and what of if also determines to a great extent how we deal with the world. Equally fundamental are our lived relationships to the world. Am I in relation or separated from the world around me? This is a wide field, but I will quickly show you the last level. This level largely eludes a cognitive and linguistic version and verbal description. Here it is about our being, about corporeality and spirituality. A fascinating field, especially for philosophers like me and theologians, but I will not go into it any further here today. So now we have all levels of sustainability transformation at a glance. My first thesis of a cultural theory of sustainability regarding this level model is, I mentioned it before, for a successful sustainability transformation, we must consider all levels. In our cultures, content is currently at work at all levels that hinders and prevents sustainability. To achieve cultures of sustainability, we need to transform all of that levels. In the discourse around sustainability in politics, in the media, but also in science, mainly the upper two levels are addressed, but not the lower ones, or let's say much less. Many years ago, we therefore proposed the field of personal sustainability as a supplement to the usual understanding of sustainability. I can't go into here, but this personal sustainability is dedicated explicitly to these deeper levels. Important, we must also include these levels in our sustainability transformation efforts. The second thesis, the levels interact with each other, respectively affect each other. The lower levels are thereby underlying the upper ones. Basically, these are more stable and have a stronger lasting effect on the upper ones. Here are two examples of this second thesis. Surely you are familiar with the rebound effect. Efficiency gains achieved through technical innovations are somehow cancelled out again as if by magic. For example, the computer promised a paperless office, but after its introduction, even more paper was used than before. Or today, cars. The engines are much more efficient than they were 30 years ago. But what happens? Instead of the cars consuming much less fuel, they have become bigger, heavier, have more features, more horsepower, and consume more or less the same as before. Within the framework of deep sustainability, the rebound effect can be explained by the fact that the cultural pattern of growth, bigger, better, faster, more, that is, cultural pattern at level 4 creeps back to undo the technical sustainability innovations at level 1. Level 4 has an effect on level 1. Or another example, the massive extinction of species and the loss of animal populations all over the world. This happens on level 1, but is very much connected to level 4, or of course also to level 2, because there's not enough regulation there, but it goes much deeper. This mass murder of animals, this thousandfold genocide, is only conceivable through a worldview that places humans aside and high above animals. If we would have a worldview and an attitude like Albert Schweitzer, and if we humans would understand and behave us as life in the midst of life that wants to live, then this massive extinction of species like today would not exist. So also here, level 4 is linked and has a huge effect on level 1. Let's go to the next thesis. The deeper the levels, the more effective they are. Analogous to leverage points, the deeper the levels, the more difficult the contents there are to recognize and to change. And the deeper we intervene, the more dangerous it becomes. Because we are digging deeper and deeper into our self-image, our cultural foundations, which give us foothold and stability in the world. Quickly to the next thesis. The upper levels can also have an effect on the lower levels. The relationship on the levels is mutual, interdependent. And only if the content of all levels, A, are coherent with sustainability and B, are coherent among each other, fit to each other with no contradiction, a culture of sustainability will be stable and durable. Or to put it more cautiously, the more coherent the contents of all levels are among each other, the more stable a culture of sustainability will be. So what we ultimately need is deep sustainability. A coherent set of content in all the layers of deep sustainability. We need a sustainability transformation that addresses and encompasses all levels and does not just take place at the two top. Now for one last point for today, and then I stop talking. Another thesis regarding sustainability transformation is cultural change and sustainability transformation always starts with the individual. I can also justify this from cultural theory. Culture takes place in the interplay of the collective and the individual. Individual and collective form the two elements of a culture or its poles. Culture takes place in an interplay. The collective, institutions like school or rules shape the individual. You may remember your school days or your family. And the individual develops and has degrees of freedom to then emancipate himself from these collective specifications, can in turn influence the collective. Now, when we look at cultural change, it always starts from the individual or the individual side of culture. The collective side is the persistent, the traditional moment of a culture. the educational system, the family laws, and so on. Change, including sustainability transformation, always starts from the individual or individuals, then let's say small groups and so on. That fits to other sustainability and transition management theories. Sustainability emerges in the niche, is practiced by a few, and from there increasingly reaches society, becomes collectivized, scaled, and institutionalized. Let's take one last look at the deep sustainability framework. The cultural spheres can also be mapped into the deep sustainability framework. The levels can be divided into a collective and an individual side based on the cultural hemispheres. The levels remain more or less the same. And the interaction between the collective and the individual can also be integrated here. Using the level scheme and the cultural hemisphere, we can now very effectively identify paths and processes of change, as well as barriers of change. One can understood sustainability and transformation path as cultural events describe A, which hemispheres is involved and how, and B, which levels are affected and in what way. Eva will give us a first tentative impression of this later. And now I'll stop here and say thanks for your attention. I'm not sure if questions and comments are allowed now or later on.
I think
Ashley.
we'll thank you so much, Oliver. First of all, let's thank him for his time, and if you feel like you want to use a react emoji, you can do that. Thank you so much for that presentation. I think it will be good to move on to Ava and Pia, hear some of their research, and then we can do questions toward the end after that. Um, uh, yeah, and Philip, I'll hold off on your question. So I'll hand it over to Ava and Pia, and you guys can take it away.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. I will share my screen as well. Yes, should be visible in presentation mode, right?
Yep, looks
Okay.
good. Thanks.
So thank you a lot to everyone who is here from my side as well. And I'm quite excited and also happy to present some of the results. Yeah. And so we have this title still here, and I show it one more time. I guess the sustainability as a deep cultural phenomenon, and what we did now is like an exploration of relations to the topic of sustainable food supply. And it's all connected to a project we are working in. And Pia, as the project leader, she will give a little, very short introduction about the project.
Yes, hello, I'm Pia Lavogne, and I will keep it short. The framing project of today's webinar is the project Co-SFSC, Co-Creating Sustainable Transformations of Food Supply Chains through Cooperative Business Models and Governance. It's a Belmont Forum project in the frame of the SSCP program on sustainable consumption and production. Could you go further, please? And we coordinate transdisciplinary research on food supply chains across 6 hubs, which are situated in Taiwan, Thailand, Turkey, Sweden, Germany, and we have Skorai as a partner in the US also. The aims are to jointly work very closely with practice partners to innovate sustainable food supply chains, to convert also existing conventional supply chains, and to strengthen existing sustainable chains with a focus on cooperative structures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pia. And yeah, linked to that, we have a work package on sustainability assessment, and in that, yeah, we had the chance to dive into the concept of deep sustainability. And here are yeah, a short summary about our aims, why we are doing that. So aims are that we would like to explore a deeper understanding of sustainability and explore how different ways people relate to sustainability in the context of food and food supply chain, and also in which ways transformation could be enabled or hindered, and at the same time simply exploring implicit norms, values, relations, and so on regarding that. So we summarized it to 4 research questions that are accompanying us in this presentation. Also, we were going to look at how individuals construct and articulate their relations to food and to more sustainable food supply arrangements, which meanings, values, and emotional orientations are expressed, and which recurrent patterns and key tensions are arising from this material we have. And yeah, in what ways these relational constellations illuminate sustainability as a deep and culturally embedded phenomenon. And our approach is that we conducted 9 exploratively theme-specifically qualitatively interviews with our research partners. And yeah, we used an interview guide, which was already prepared to access or to try to access different layers of deep sustainability, which we did with open narrative questions and photo elicitation. So to invite open storytelling. And yes, the concept of sustainability is our base for that. And yeah, it was necessary to have a specific way also of conducting the interviews. It was important of building trust to enable openness and to create a space as safe as possible for the storytelling. The topic of food is very suitable, and we used it because it's a daily practice and also a cultural entry point. Now, here's a summary of our objectives. I will go through them a little bit quicker. I'll try. I try to. So the goal is to identify the patterns and key tensions, possibly, and yeah, to explore which role deeper levels, such as values, relations, and worldviews, play for researchers, and yeah, in which way it helps to transform food systems towards more sustainability. Also to contextualize everything regarding sustainability definitions, sustainable development, and also to keep in mind to explore possible deep leverage points. With all of that, our objective is also to allow different access to the topic and to further develop this cultural theory of sustainability transitions. So to start, I was saying that we looked at the different relations people have to food and sustainability. And so I will give a short introduction of the understanding of relations. So here are different schools of thought that, are working with this term. And it's referring to some like patterned connections between entities and often seen as a base for social life and cognition. And so there are like some very short examples from the field of philosophy, from psychology, sociology, and also anthropology and cultural studies. I will give this as an insight in a way. I won't go too deep, just to keep in mind that it's important to define about this in a little bit more when we also will work on it more. What I would like to also focus is this kind of definition, which is more connected to an interdisciplinary approach. It's a term called relations to the world. In German, it's Weltbeziehung. And I will read the quote for a moment, just so that it will be easier to keep in mind, and so it can accompany us during this presentation. So, understanding of relations. Every social formation establishes a very specific way of being in the world for the subjects, a very specific set of relations to the world that is formed out of characteristic ways of experiencing, acting in, and connecting to the world. Okay, so now to our approach. Regarding the material and the research questions, I conducted different codes to access these different forms of relations. So you can see this as first kind of like codes. And I summarized them, or I clustered them into a more thematic way. So now we have 4 thematic clusters with the names research and the relation between the work and the research and the interview, the nature and the material world, personal embeddedness, and societal dimensions. And you see that, each of the clusters contains different kind of deeper ways of, or different kinds of diverse relations. And those clusters will also, we will look at them a little bit closer now, connected to the interview material we have. So looking at the first cluster, the research and interview relations, several patterns could be found out. And it is, for example, that researchers position themselves as linking knowledge and practice and not just producing academic outputs. Research is often framed as responsibility, non-extractive, reflective, and also oriented toward real-world change in food systems. And the interview itself, looking at the process, becomes a space that brings motivations, values, and emotional orientations, which is usually left outside from formal research settings. And also trust and familiarity mattered. So, like I already said, the interviews touched personal, emotional dimensions, and a transition from out of the comfort zone feelings to more like something like thankfulness was experienced. So in the end, I always have a couple of quotes that are giving a deeper insight to this. So I have to see how much I can. I realize it's a lot of material, so let's see. Yeah, as an example, which came also from time to time in different ways, was the relation to the practice partners, that it is from importance, and yeah, it's like you really want to make sure you are taking seriously your relationship with the practice partners. And for each cluster, yeah, there are also several key tensions that can be named. So two of them regarding the research and the interview relation was that there was a tension between hope and agency, and like terms like frustration, grief, and so the research was described as meaningful but also emotional demanding in the face of structural barriers. And yeah, there is a transformative ambition, but which is colliding with limited structures. So, quoted, sometimes it can feel like a little bit like research operates in its own little bubble. Now looking at another cluster, which includes different forms of personal embeddedness. Several patterns were explored, like food and research are not external objects. Food is described as part of biography, identity, and even care. And several participants framed food as home, as a love language, and furthermore. And work was also named as personally embedded, so academic life not separate from who participants are. Quotes are, cooking is my love language, or our academic life is not distinct from who we are. Key tensions here can be named as a strong tension between meaningful relation and functionalized consumption. So for some, food is like care and care for others and freedom. And for others, it is, also price related and related to time pressure. Participants also describe inner tensions between commitment and pessimism, and or meaningful agency and political frustration were mentioned. Connected to that, emotions like or feelings like freedom, nostalgia, care, and frustration were mentioned. Quotes are, a feeling of cynicism about the state of politics, or I'm working in just like a human capacity. Now looking at the third cluster, which is social and societal dimensions. The dominant pattern which can be named is that food is universally relevant, but unequally experienced. So aspects like justice, public awareness were mentioned. It's mentioned also as a basic human need and right, but the access is shaped by inequality. And different connections with food are like livelihoods, health, dignity, and so on. And the research and the food-related work are understood socially consequential and with huge impacts on policy and governance and so on. And a recurring societal vision is stronger support for small producers. So quotes are, food is such an essential part of our lives. It cannot be a privilege at all. It has to be established as a basic right. My well-being is connected to their well-being. And tensions that can be mentioned here are this like ethical intention versus the practical constraints. So operating in these kind of like structural barriers, also like bureaucracy. And another tension is between like everyday nourishment and also the structural inequality. So it's to see food as a basic human need and right, but also being faced with this inequality to access this good food. And the third tension here is between cultural continuity and adaptation. So, some participants value regional food, traditional cultural backgrounds, but also recognize that need for change is necessary. And quotes are here, it cannot be a privilege at all. It has to be established as a basic right. Now, coming to the last cluster, which is about nature and the material world and the relations between that. And here nature is not treated or seen as a resource or backdrop, but as a living relation. And participants speak of respect, admiration, gratitude. So I value the nature in the food systems. But there was mentioned like care for soil, especially, and seeing food as a ecological relation. So connecting personal experience, social change, and ecological care. Or quotes are below. Respect to nature as its own. And also, for example, I love to stick my hands in the soil. And key tensions, which arise here or can be seen, are between the use and the protection of food. It must sustain life, but it should not have this strong harming on the nature. And between closeness and alienation, so between the connection to the land and the food, while others encounter food mainly through convenience, costs, and in the industrial distance. And across this material, also care for the nature also includes grief over loss and responsibility towards future human and non-human life. So quotes are respect to nature as its own, or we should be doing better for people and the earth. So now you got like an short insight about different patterns and also key tensions that arose from the interview material. And now I give an attempt to link also to the deep sustainability framework and connected to the different clusters. And by reading the interviews and looking at the 6 different levels, we can see which dimensions are foregrounded and predominant in each thematic cluster. And so some of them can be named foregrounded or predominant, but mostly, all of the levels are accessed in different ways. However, in the research and interview relation, norms and values were predominant. For person embeddedness, I would say it would be perception and relations. Food well-being society, it was more mixed, so more different levels are predominant. And for the last nature and material world, it's also interesting that as well as material, also as well, both also the perception and relations are accessed. So nearly all levels are touched with a tendency to the deeper levels. And also the material shows that how sustainability in food system is lived simultaneously as practice, relation, and worldview. So everyday actions and structures are saturated with emotions, relationships, values, and images of a good life. And the levels are more like analytic lenses, not boxes into which you force the data. And so the interviews, they keep their richness, but the levels help you show, for example, that nature and material world holds together concrete ecological practices, like the material level, with emotional care and grief, level 5, ethical stances, and existential attempts of level 6, which is like maybe not reached level 6, but thoughts about it. And this is a different way again to look at it. So I tried to connect each level with specific emerging themes from the interviews themselves. So I will just go through them shortly to give an insight. So you can add to the material level, especially regarding the topic of food, that everyday practices, cooking, growing, and so on are part. And for the regulatory level, it could be bureaucratic barriers and also project funding limits connected to research project. Regarding values, integrity, justice are named. And looking at worldviews, there's a tendency to go from control to aspects of cooperation, which is very connected to our project, looking at cooperative structures also. Looking at level 5, regarding the relations, empathy, gratitude, and also an aesthetic sense of how food is seen came up. And if we would look at the last level, something like deeper meaning, devotion, or even a holistic identity can be named. So to wrap all this information up, I will put it in relation to what was said in the beginning about sustainability, sustainable development, and also my definition, or the definition for Hartmut Rosa about relations to the world. So you can say that sustainability emerges as a multi-layered cultural formation, shaped not only by institutional and policy frameworks, but also by motivations, identities, emotions, and deep ways of relating to food, society, and oneself. And the understanding of sustainable development here becomes visible through the topic of food. And now this is connected to the definition of sustainable development from Oliver from the beginning, that food systems as ones that allow people to live well today while protecting vulnerable human and non-human life, ensuring fair access and livelihoods, and preserving the ecological and cultural conditions future generations will also depend on. And then looking at the definition of relations to the world, the interview showed how our current social formation organizes very specific relations to food, work, and self relations that range from caring and yeah, resonant to constraint and alienation. So it can be seen also as alternative ways of being in the world that yeah, reconfigure how we experience, act, and connect to the world across levels of sustainability. And to wrap this up in another way, yeah, we can say that deeper levels are accessible and reached due to values, relations, and workflows because they play a big role for researchers in this project. And the approach also enables different access points to and deeper understanding of the topic. The interview guide, yeah, it was already oriented for sure towards accessing deeper levels, but it was interesting to see that that there were changes or turning points happening when the participants actually opened up step by step a little bit more, which also varied across the interviews for sure, and which allowed the access to deeper levels. And yeah, this all is still a work in progress. So it's kind of like the first steps working with this in this way. And so yeah, the findings are exploratory and based on our project specific qualitative sample. And yeah, the insights show patterns rather than broad generalizations. And it offers a first situated reading of how researchers narrate their relations to work in this project in connection to the deeper aspects of sustainability. And yeah, the food topic, sustainability, and relations are highly interlinked. And give us a very short self-reflection now in the end, because yeah, as the interviewer, I was very involved, and yeah, I observed a gradual building of trust and openness over the course of the interviews. Like I said, from a bit of like a out of comfort zone feeling to more like thankfulness and yeah, the allowing of a personal perspective. It was not self-evident at first, but it was possible and also valuable. It was good that we had already pre-existing contact with yeah, the interview partners and also having met them in person because it supported the openness and the trust. And for me, it was also like a very genuine emotional resonance. I say I also had this someone like goosebumps sometimes and a lot of thankfulness. And yes, for sure we will work further on this. And so to embed it into a further research perspective, here are two questions yeah, that there are accompanying us for the next steps and the process to further develop a cultural theory of sustainability transition. And yeah, that was all.
Okay, good.
Thank you so much for attention. I have no clue how much time I took.
I think we're okay, but we'll go
Good.
somewhat quickly with Eileen, but we can share an emoji reaction if you want for Ava. She did a really good job. So one question that came up in the chat that I want to ask sooner than the question and answer session, just because it's a little bit about the methodology of this specific study, and so it was just a point of clarification. Pia already answered part of it, but Naya asked, just curious to know the geographic context of the study, and Pia answered we're working across the teams of Taiwan, Thailand, Turkey, Sweden, Germany, and the United States. But then how is culture operationally defined for this study? So either Pia or Ava can take this? Because I can imagine you're thinking a little bit about how the researchers are answering from different cultural contexts. So how do you define that when you're thinking about this study? Pia?
Perhaps you could also, throw it to Oliver, because Oliver, you had at the beginning of your presentation a slide on this.
Okay, and I can repeat. Culture is something that is the glue for a community, and it happens in communication, and it happens in habits and in worldviews. So it's very fundamental for our understanding as individuals, and as individuals as part of a specific community.
Mhm. That's good. Anything you want to add, Ava or Pia, on how you're thinking about culture when you're doing these interviews in particular?
I guess it's highly diverse. So, I mean, you have to consider where you are from and at the same time how you live. So,
Yep,
and
that makes
it
sense.
includes all.
Yep. Okay, we have other really good questions I want to get to at the end, but first, we wanted to take some time with Eileen and ask her some questions as somebody who has been interviewed as a part of this research. And we wanted to ask, what does deep sustainability mean to you? And thinking a little bit about before and after the interview, the experience of doing the interview, did this change your conception of deep sustainability?
Okay, so the our interview was eye-opening for me. I the notion of deepness is something I deal with. I'm doing whatever I do my research from a realist relational approach. Developed under Roy Bhaskaar's pioneering work, but later advanced by Andrew Sayer's contribution to the philosophy of internal relations. And here in this methodology, the reality is conceptualized as layered structure. And it positions reality not on a singular plane, confirmed to the empirical domain, but in a layered ontology. So I already had this understanding. I approach whatever I study from this critical realist approach that studies the phenomena to uncover layer by layer. That was my understanding, that we would be talking about those notions of sustainability that lies behind, beneath, beyond our observations, our experiences, and data sets. So this is the holistic, I am looking at it from critical political economy perspective. This is a holistic understanding of the world. So I came to the interview with this understanding, and Eva began asking me quite personal, emotional questions. And it was a bit of kind of challenging in the beginning, but as our interview as our communication evolved, actually we have converged. Our understanding, my subjective formation. I don't like the word individual. It is coming from the liberal paradigm. I like my subject and subjective formation and subjectivity, and my subjective formation and how I relate to our research is also holistic. and it is from my subjective position, and I take culture not something that divides us. So having those 5 countries, including the US, 5 cases, is not that culture is something that necessarily divides those 5 cases, but indeed it connects us and it brings us together. So it was, as with our interview, it was, sort of, I realized that it is also, this holistic notion, this relational notion also begins from the subject's point of view, from my point of view, from my relationship with my research, from my relationship with my research topic. So it was, to me, quite an eye-opening, it is a different way of different way of approaching. It is the same notion of deep sustainability, but a different, venue of approaching vis-a-vis, or as opposed to shallow or superficial. Right, so the shallow or superficial sustainability is very simply this empiricistic presumptions that the sustainability is perceived by our senses, right? So and therefore it is sort of almost like engineering, the optimism of the engineers, that they can solve those technical problems. So we, in our interview, we have this deep dive in the philosophy, and complemented, or perhaps questioned, such shallow and superficial sustainability with the deep sustainability of philosophy. And it was not pessimistic, as opposed to this euphoria of engineering, almost like hallucinations about changing everything and solving our sustainability problems. But in our interview, we have seen our power. We have observed our power as subjects and as collective individuals. We are individuals, but we are collective subjects. So I am not at all methodologically individualist. I don't know what Oliver would think about it. Not at all methodologically individualist. So I see myself in my collective, will, and with our intervention, with our interview, I once again realized that my subjective formation is really shaped in my team and in my research, and it was the power that I have to transform from below, the deep, from deep, right? So that is, to me, it was quite an eye-opening perspective to deep sustainability. Not something completely new, but a new approach to what I knew already.
Mm-hmm. And let's we only have maybe 2 or 3 minutes for another question, but sorry, I'm wondering if Oliver has any reaction to this question of the individual and the subjective.
Okay. I try.
Okay.
The question was okay. Let's begin at the change. Change starts at the individual or from the subjective, Eileen. Yes, but it should not stop there. Otherwise, there will be no collective or societal change. So it's very important that we are not solitude individuals, but we are embedded in a collective, and we are able and have the power to change something.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait, for example, that laws for sustainability appear from themselves. Some individuals have to stand for it. For example, or you have to call friends to demonstrate, or even in a party, the party itself is not for a law or against it, but specific individuals, specific politicians are bringing specific laws into the discussion. So this volatile motive of culture is at the individual side. You need the individuals for change. And that's something very different to individualism. Individualism is something different. It's a concept of humans stressing the autonomy of individuals. And for me, a cultural motive and pattern that has to be transformed as well. So I'm with Eileen. Individualism is a cultural program that separates us from others and the world in the end.
Yeah.
And that relates to sustainability problems. So you can find one root of unsustainability, like you mentioned, or in the chat, indeed, in an excessive and overstated individualism.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We only have maybe a minute or two, Eileen, to answer this one, so I can make some time for the other people's questions. But what did you take from the interview? I think you kind of answered this a little bit already, but for your work as a sustainability researcher, but also personally.
Well, my take was sustainability is a ethical issue. It is, it is about ethics. It is about really, philosophy. So our talk was very much deep in that sense. So it was about, all these just notions. What is good life? So they are really almost like Aristotelian notions. We touched upon those Aristotelian notions. So it is never an optimization problem of engineers. It is the really ethical concerns, ethical notions of the philosophers of what is good life, but not exactly like Oliver said. Aristotle did not know anything about individual. It is, sort of, he did not know the word. Even the subject was not there, right? So subject was underlying thing. So it was, but he talked about justice. He talked about living together in a just city. So my take was ethics and ethical life, living conviviality, living together in our team and with the other teams and with everyone.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your reflections. I want to switch over to some questions. I don't know, I know Philip had to leave, but Helena, I don't know if you're still there listening, but I can read your question. This question is from Helena to Oliver. Our Western culture has evolved over centuries to bring us to where we are now, unsustainable. Can you apply very briefly your framework to that transformation in order to exemplify it? Especially, I'd like to see in practice the thesis that transformation starts with an individual. So we already started this discussion a bit. I don't know if Helena, you want to add anything to your question. You're muted right now.
Actually, I had some time while others were talking to think through Oliver's presentation. Thank you, Oliver. And I want to say I agree with you that it starts with the individual. As I was mentally going through various my own heuristics, that it's an individual that is trying to break out of the dominant cultural dominant culture, and it has to start with an individual, but that individual must connect with many other individuals for it to become a collective change. But I've been thinking about this evolution of our societies, and I want to say this: the way I see it is, all organized societies are basically unsustainable, right? That's a very strong statement, right? But when I go back to the Roman society, and in antiquity, or Assyrian Empire, all of it, the only reason is that they ultimately were sustainable. Actually, Roman Empire collapsed partly because of its unsustainability, is the scale. Technology allowed us to make this unsustainable culture more intense and its effects more intense, and of course, the number of people on Earth, and so on and so forth. So I don't see a way out of it, essentially, because I think it goes all the way from your level 1 all the way down to your level 6. Essentially, once societies organize themselves, meaning institutions, governance system, and urban conglomerates, they all are unsustainable.
Yep.
So,
Thoughts, Oliver?
yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Helena. For me, the shift to sustainability, to a culture of sustainability, is really a step in the history of human mankind. It's a big thing. It's really a big thing, and you have to go down all the levels and
Yes.
and come back again
Yeah.
to change many things. And you mentioned the Romans and some of our cultural patterns that are unsustainable. For example, the motive of unlimited growth. It it roots in thousands of years of human history. This motive of growth is very, very old. It's older than the Romans. It
Right.
begins with agriculture, for example. So it's very different to change these very old cultural patterns. So it's not easy. It's very difficult to change it. And what you
Maybe
mentioned
they are
too,
not changeable. Could it be that they're not changeable?
there are humans on Earth that are not, or cultures on Earth, or were cultures on Earth, that were not addicted to this growth. This indigenous people,
Yeah.
they were stable in their population and in their environmental connections for hundreds and thousands of years
Yes,
until
but
they were extincted.
right.
So there is the possibility to overcome this growth. It's not a human motive, but it's a cultural one and a very effective one. But I think we can change, we can overcome it.
No, I don't think so. I think once
Okay.
you're talking about indigenous populations, they did not have the kind of organized society with governance, with institutions, with large urban conglomerates. But once that appears, I don't think you can have sustainability.
I wonder
We
whether
can.
or not
Yeah.
Eileen or Eva or either
Okay.
want to make any comments on this. Are we doomed? Is there any chance for change? Eileen?
Well, I think our situation is very tragic. In Greek tragedies, everybody knows where this story goes.
Yeah.
Even the person who is going to die at the end of the play knows that it is usually a he is going to die, and all the other actors, they know they are going to die. I think the first thing is we have to accept that we are doomed. We have to accept that there has to be a change. Otherwise, it is really a tragedy. So the pessimism is sometimes a positive thing. So I totally sympathize with Halina that it is. It cannot. Perhaps it's not going to change. So then we have to do something else, right? So this is, I really feel pessimistic about it. And I really feel that we have to really come to face the pessimism, face the tragedy, because only in that case we will be able to conceive the idea, because it is not empirically in front of our eye. We have to conceive the idea of sustainability. Something we do here affects 200 years. Or something we do here affects Amazons in Brazil. So this time and space limitations of our understanding is we have to really accept such limitations, and probably from there on we have to accept that our individuality, our understanding is really bounded, time and space bounded. So these are, the limitations, the challenges. So I feel like, probably like Halina, but I really see pessimism as a good thing, as creative thing.
Mm-hmm. I have another question from somebody named Ite, but I don't see them here. But then I have a question that just came in from Martina. I don't know if Martina, you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, or I can read it.
I can unmute myself. Hi.
Okay. Hi.
No, it was just back to this idea that organized societies are unsustainable, which I haven't considered up until now. So I think I need to reflect a bit more on it, but I don't disagree with it. But I thought, I guess it's an idea. For me, if there are analyses by like Rockström et al. and Eat Lancet on food-related planetary diets, more specifically, that look at, okay, but can we live within these planetary boundaries? So is there a way on a scale from if sustainability is on a scale in terms of unsustainable and sustainable, then how do we achieve the transformation required to live within those planetary boundaries to avoid, I think, what Eileen was referring to in terms of like a next sort of human like a
Catastrophe,
complete,
collapse. Yeah.
yeah.
Ava, Pia, do one of you want to answer these questions? Maybe some moments of hope you have from conducting these interviews?
Yeah, what comes up for me also is this, that it depends on how you also look at sustainability. So how do you perceive what is actually sustainable? So that's maybe another big question, but an aspect is also connected to that. How involved are you in this all? So how do you feel connected to sustainability in a way that you cannot even name it as a term? So how do you feel part of the world or living? And isn't that actually the highest form of sustainability? And so, like, I would say, like, hope is highly connected to allowing oneself to be part and to be with all of that, and to so that goes into like a more like a even spiritual perspective, but it helps. So you won't hurt. So the ones you love, you won't hurt that much. So the more you are connected to everything, the less harm. Yeah, hopefully, I think that's my that will be. So yeah.
Eileen, do you want to add something to that?
Yes, well, last thing, I don't want to end with this tragic and tragedy and pessimism. In addition to this, probably in a dialectic way, the hope or the perhaps some better stories are there. So in our research, we are going through, so we are observing so many challenges of sustainability, but at the same time, we are in each case, in our each hub, we have better stories. They are not the best stories, but they are better than good. And they are almost like the keyholes for future. So they are small, but it gives some hope for sustainability. Some rays of hope can enter from that better story. So and each of those, we have 5 better stories. Each of those stories have extra human efforts from a group of individuals. So it is like really, it is a collective. I really don't care if it started from individual or community, but if when we observe it, it is a community level thing. It is a group level thing. So it is not only one individual, right? So it is those are the collectivities trying to hold on to each other and trying to change things. So this is also there, in addition to and on top of all those tragic developments of the time, but there are also some ways of mitigating and not necessarily adapting to the changes that we are going through. So I also wanted to add this, and it is also part of sustainability.
Right.
Right. It is also part of, what is sustainable, despite all those, challenges, all those stress, ecological crises.
Pia, you had your hand raised. We only have a couple of minutes until we are at our time.
Yes, yeah. And someone it was
Oh, I'm not sure is somebody in the same room?
okay. We have two computers here, sorry. It was nice last words from Eileen.
Okay. Wait, yeah, go ahead and talk through Laura's.
Can you?
Oh, wait, now you unmute, Pia.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now
Yes.
it's normal.
I think and hope from the interviews and also from the whole project, I really saw that this topic of food and food work on food gives me also hope that the topic for working towards sustainability, because it's a strong mediator and relation builder. So in all of the interviews, we had this topic of food relating to other people, relating to the earth, to sustainability in itself. And I think it's really, it's a very good starting point for sustainability transformations.
Wonderful. We have only 1 or 2 minutes left. I don't know if anyone wants to have the final word. This discussion has been fantastic. I really love how honest everybody has been and open to discussing. Maybe Oliver wants to have the last word if he started us up, and we can finish with you. It's up to you.
Okay. If we have a look at the world, at our governments and all the politics that is going on, it's it looks very disastrous. It looks like a tragedy. But I'm sure that beneath the surface there are a lot of people like we, and they are not want to be humanity to be extinct and not to die out. So I have hope for a good future, but it yeah it will not be without Verluste. Was war Verluste?
Loss.
Without loss, and
Mm.
and it would be difficult it might be difficult to come in a good future, but I think it's worth to try it.
Well, thank you so much for these comments. Thank you to all of our presenters. If you want to share a reaction emoji, you can do so. Thank you for all the great comments. This is being recorded and it will be up on our website. So however you registered for this, you'll be able to see the link to the website and you'll be able to see the recording. Thank you again, everybody, for taking the time and for discussing.